So today we're going to be reviewing a podcast by Jonathan Pageau. Pageau, I don't know. We can link it to this. And they're talking to Dr. Michael Levin, not Dr. Michael Levin, the cardiologist, but Dr. Michael Levin, the biologist. And for like 20 years, he's been working with the communication between cells within creatures to do some really interesting projects. And my brother-in-law sent it to me and was like, man, I thought this stuff was still science fiction. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. So what are your thoughts on it, Caleb?
Yeah, I thought where we are currently with all of that science is really interesting, and it honestly makes me think where we are going in terms of what we might be able to do in the future and what they were talking about. Uh, I don't know how there are definitely going to be some ways that people can screw up the ethics with how our world works. So, yeah, that was honestly the first thing I thought, and I think I texted you a little bit about it. It's like if we're able to do some of the stuff that they were talking about, there's gonna be, I don't know. So it's like, for example, curing cancer would be amazing, but then the way that they were talking about curing cancer, you could also slow down aging. So like, are people going to, or even stop aging? I don't know exactly how far they would be able to get, but if you could stop aging, would people live forever? And like that, what would that mean for our world? Like how, because
Mm-hmm.
if everyone lives forever or whoever wants to live forever does, then how many people are going to end up on the world? What are the resources going to look like? Is that even just ethical? Like, should people live forever? There's just so many questions that I had in my head when I was
Yeah, it
listening
brings
to
up a lot of
the
questions.
videos.
For viewers, the full context was, from what I understood, they were taking chemicals, and I'm just going to throw scientists up in somewhere. Some biologist is going to like commit suicide. Um, but apparently, like when cells are not communicating with each other via the whatever the voltage is that they send to each other, um, you end up with problems. And the one thing that they were doing that I thought was showed this well was where they would amputate a frog's leg and then apply a chemical that would keep the ion transfer the same as if the joint were still there. And instead of cauterizing, creating a scar, instead of creating scar tissue, the body would rebuild the joint as if it was like still there but damaged. So they would end up with a frog's leg that maybe didn't look the same, quite the same, but still responded with feeling, had function, could move, etc., etc. And this also included like being able to suppress in tadpoles, like growing eyes on their head and instead grow a fully functional eye on their tail. And they knew it was fully functional because they rigged up like some kind of course where they could train them to do things, and it had to do them with visual cues. So to me, this was fascinating because, like I was saying to you, for a long time, like Richard Dawkins would go around and part of his talk would um, he would have randomly generated letters, and he's like, eventually you will get, and it's some, I can't even remember what it is, maybe a sentence from Shakespeare or something. He's like, eventually if you keep throwing numbers in this and replacing them, etc., you'll get this sentence, which is fine. Like he's trying to indicate that evolution will get you to some point, macroevolution. But what it fails to admit is that you need forward looking memory. So you have to have some intelligence or body or set of information to tell you once you reach two arms, it's useful. But after that, like we don't need a third. Um, like this sentence is meaningful, but after that, because uh, blind random mutation is just going to lead you down a random path. And if it's in small increments, you don't even get developments that will be helpful. So, like, you know, you don't end on a development that gives you two arms, you end on a development that gives you one stub. So, you like, how long you got to go down that path of growing mutations to get something that's useful? And there's nothing to indicate that it's going to be useful from where it started. Um, so anyway, that has been a criticism of mine, and this sort of keys into that, like, oh, this is the forward-looking memory, because I think Brett Weinstein has also mentioned this, where like DNA is your assembly level language or your binary. It is the information. It, but what a lot of the creationist argument keys into is that information doesn't hold all of what you need to build a organism. It is the tools, so it has all the information on like what comprises a hand, what comprises a wing, what comprises of whatever, but it does not tell you where to put it or how many you need. Um, and there's this layer. So your functional, your program is your organism. So it's like your functional human is your program. Your binary is your DNA. In between there is something that normal evolution biology does not account for well currently. But we know it has to exist because most people don't end up with two heads. Um, and and that's information. Like it is actually information that is contained somewhere. And so with this guy's work, he's talking about intercepting the way in which cells communicate with each other, which is not information that's held in the DNA. And this, your body knows to create certain things in certain locations based off of this collective intelligence. So in the video, they were talking about like um, giving instructions to the body to build a second head here. So in flatworms, they've been building flatworms with two heads for a long time. Like they can just tell the body, like, oh, you're supposed to have a head here. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to have a head here. Um, but somehow the normal functioning body knows to stop. And uh, there was another one. Oh, with I think it was newts, where they said that in newts you can end up with newts that have more cells or less cells, but regardless of how many cells they have, the remaining cells will either grow less tissue or grow more tissue to fill a similar space so that the newt is of a specific size. So somehow the body knows, oh, you're roughly supposed to be this size. But that's not information that is contained in DNA, at least not that we have found,
Yeah, one
which
thing
is
that I
fascinating.
thought was cool was they were talking about the frogs and I guess it was salamanders and regrowing limbs and stuff, and how each of the cells by itself doesn't really know what to do, but together when they're going in the same direction, they like know where to grow. And then, like you were saying, they they know a stopping point. So it's like there's
Mm-hmm.
some point where they just stop and know that everything's done, which I think,
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes to show when it messes up. Like sometimes, not necessarily for humans, but if cells mess up, then people are people or animals are disformed. But it's just cool that they don't really know where they're going by themselves, but together they can all go in a similar direction and then know when to stop, which is crazy. But okay, another question I was thinking about, just because I enjoy sports, if you can like grow random limbs on people, then I don't think that sports would be a thing anymore because you could just grow a superhuman person who can do whatever you want. Like you could make them 10 feet tall, you could give them four arms, they could play defense in basketball super easily. They could, I don't know. I feel like that would ruin our current how our current world works in certain ways. Because obviously there will be people who use it for good, like curing cancer and regrowing limbs that people have lost. But then some people will take it too far. It's just how it works when, just like AI, there's people who are using it for good and people who are
Hmm.
scam people. So yeah, I don't know. That just brings up for me, I guess, probably more questions than even answers. It's like a
Yeah.
really, really cool um, idea, but also like what would the guardrails be? You know, like how would you even make sure that people don't misuse that kind of science?
Hmm. I
Which,
imagine it's already been misused somewhere. My assumption is if there's something like that in biology or whatever that's been discovered that has regulations on it where you can't use it in a human, I just assume that it's been used in a human somewhere and we just don't know about it. Unless, of course, his research is cutting edge enough that, like, you know, it's brand new to the world. Nobody's ever discovered anything like it. But since he's been doing it for 20 years, I don't know. I don't know if it's cynical to be like, yeah, somebody's probably experimenting with it in a lab that we don't know about.
unfortunately, I mean, I don't even know what the Nazis did in some of their experiments, so you never know if they tried random stuff like that. But doesn't mean it's good. They could have done a lot. I'm not sure. Uh, yeah. No, yeah, I think it's really cool how when they grew the eye on the tadpole and like its back, it still figured out a way to connect to the spinal cord or whatever and
Hmm.
still send electrical signals in order to see, even though it was a completely different spot. And one interesting thing that he brought up was when they told the eye to grow in the back, it's like the tadpole never even expected the eye to grow in the front, so it just figured out how to make it work. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
like, oh, this was supposed to be in the front, now we don't know what to do. It was like it fully adapted to where it grew because in its mind, in that tadpole's mind, that's what it was supposed to happen.
Hmm.
So I think it would be cool. I think it's just cool and shows like the adaptability of animals and eventually the adaptability of human bodies and how we can adapt to a lot of different things, uh,
Hmm.
even if they're not totally normal.
Not totally normal. Yeah. I that is true. Like with an organism that knows no different is going to behave as if like there's no reference group for it. So it's not competing with somebody else that now, yeah, that brings up a good point that probably if you created tadpoles like this and put them in the wild, they would die because they would be unfit for possibly running away from predators or being out competed by tadpoles that did have eyes in the front of their head. I don't know. They may not be able to feed as well or something, but yeah, I think that it has great potential for humans eventually. And my comment about like what I think to be the coolest part was where he was talking about they could put cancer tissue into a tadpole or a creature or whatever, and it would cause a tumor. But then when they used whatever chemical to keep the tissue, the new tissue they put in, or yeah, connected to the surrounding tissue instead of
Oh
like a
yeah.
tumor becoming disconnected electrically, um, they would still detect the DNA of the tumor, but there was no tumor growth. Like all the
Yeah,
tissue just stayed the same. I thought that was really cool.
that
And
is.
maybe it's only good in targeted applications, but if not, that would be really neat that you could take somebody who had had a metastasized cancer or something, possibly give them more time. Yeah, I did have the thought because you had mentioned um, elongating life, and he mentioned that Dr. Levine mentioned that at least at one point, and but I didn't hear him say exactly how he assumed that would work. Did you?
I guess I'm not really sure. I was just kind of assuming, like, because cancer is cells that grow too fast and turn into
Mm-hmm.
like not normal cells. I was assuming that if you can slow down the growth of cancer cells, then you could also figure out how to slow down the growth of other cells in a
Mm.
way that like slows down aging. So it's not,
Mm-hmm.
the cells aren't um, dying as fast, I guess.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
don't,
The problem is with that though, is you're going to get old. You're going to age. You're, yeah. You either age poorly or you die sooner. Those are your
it's like
options.
a Botox that you can't see or something.
Yeah. Because like what I was thinking is like unless you can extend the physical length of the telomeres, you're gonna end up with cancer anyway. But how long can you stave that off, right? Because like at some point when you get to the end of the telomeres, your cells just start dying. Um, or just all becoming cancerous. So like could we have a 200-year-old human before that really starts happening? Uh like how much time does it really buy you? But yeah, I mean, even if you give a terminal patient a couple more years, that's still pretty revolutionary.
Do you think it could change quality of life too? Because if I was a terminal patient and I was going to be terminal the next
Yeah.
year, I would not want to keep living like
Yeah.
that. I would be like,
Well, yeah, that was I would think so because he said that they performed the process in some creature and had the cancer either I can't remember how I termed it, whether it was reduced or eliminated. So I would suspect that you could put cancer into remission at least for some time until it
comes
stopped
back.
working in some way.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Where do you think the line is? Like, let's say it's possible to do whatever you want. Like, you can grow anything, slow down anything. Where do you think the line is?
I don't know that you could do it forever. Like I think it's entirely possible that you could grow anything at some point that is a reality. Like CRISPR is a thing, the CRISPR technology that we use to put genes in one creature from another. Um, and then you could use some technology like this to maybe um, start the process of like showing that gene. So like
Like
if
growing
you
tails?
yeah, um, I think the limitations would be for how long can you do it? Does it stress your cells more? Um, and what kind of chemicals you got to put in your body to perform that? Like,
Hmm.
because there is some sort of physical degradation that probably comes with putting these chemicals in a creature, but I don't know that. This also, I'm also thinking from the paradigm of everything comes at a cost, which I know is like psychologically not always true, but in the physical world, that's pretty much always true, um, with very few exceptions.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking like, okay, this, here's the benefits. Where are the costs? Which is why I think about terminal patients because the costs are so low. Like, take whatever experimental drug you want, you're dying anyway. So if you can eke out a
Sounds
little more
horrible to
time or
say,
feel a
but
little,
it's
I
true.
mean, yeah, like that's sort of my argument for allowing exemptions for expediting experimental trials with people who are terminal because they're like, I have a terminal condition and I'm going to die soon. So I might as well experiment with this drug to see if it works.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, limitations, I don't know. Yeah, if we lived for even, well, I was telling my wife, even if you can take a 70-year-old and extend their life by 20 years across a whole population, that changes society in a huge way, massive way. Um, I mean, your wealth gets bigger, but if we can't increase quality of life, then your wealth might not get bigger. It might get smaller because you're living another 20 years.
You're just going.
Um, yeah. I don't know that it changes young people's behavior because we haven't already changed young people's behavior to be more
Hard,
like
hard to do that.
long-term focused. Um,
Yeah.
so you may just end up with a similar distribution of like, these are the people that are looking long-term and these are the people that are not. And, but like, yeah, if we increase life by 100 years, like, okay, then you got housing problems because people aren't dying and moving out of houses. So does society become like in other countries where the amount of time you live in the same house with your parents is huge, and then eventually they die and you take over, and the cycle, you end up with 3 or 4 generations in the same building. I don't know.
We lived another 100 years. I mean, even if you waited till the 30 or 35, like you would have 5 or 6 generations in the exact same house.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, if you could figure out how to increase your quality of life, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
I think of it kind of like technology. Like in technology allows us to do so many things, but it also in terms of um, mental health has been probably a net negative. So, but
mm-hmm.
it also has allowed us to do more things that are positive. So I kind of think of this in a similar way. There's going to be so many positives that come out of being able to slow down cancer growth and stuff like that. That as long as, I mean, there are laws for a reason, and there's a lot of things already in this world that people who take people who do things unethically will just break those laws anyways. So
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not trying to get political, but like if if someone uses a gun correctly, then most of the time harm does not come to people. If someone uses it incorrectly, then harm will come to people. So it's like this is kind of a similar thing where the people who use it correctly are going to bring a lot of good. The people who use it incorrectly are not. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll just have to create the laws when we get there and I guess deal with some of the consequences. So
Right. Yeah. Once you open Pandora's box, you can't close it again.
yeah,
So we're stuck with it.
yeah.
It could be very interesting. Uh, we'll see what happens, I guess.
How long do you think?
I know so little about it. I try not to put limitations on. I'm trying really hard to do the whole like, everything is possible, therefore I should look for it. I had another experience with a couple this week of people that like, they weren't expecting such and such, and so they didn't know it was part of reality, or like, you perceive someone in a certain way and so you write off everything they say until you realize that what you were told that they said was inaccurate.
That
um
happens a lot in politics on both sides, on all sides.
Unfortunately. But in order to minimize that in my own self, trying to keep an open mind of things. So not just jumping to like, well, how can we stop? Like Dr. Levine said, he's like 10% of the emails I get are related to like, you should stop this right now. This is gonna wreak havoc on society. But the other 90% are people who are like, why haven't you worked on this more? I have a terminal illness, or my child has whatever genetic disorder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, everything comes with costs. How long do you think it will be before, I don't know, what would a marker be? Like the first person regrows their arm?
Yeah,
Or
probably
how long do
somebody
you think that would
regrowing
be?
a limb. I I well, what he said about the single cellular organisms that were just like human tissue, not connected to any other tissue, but they would still do work. Uh, like the one he said where if you take human tissue and tell it to just like start doing things, it will just automatically, if there's what was it, nerve tissue around, it'll just start repairing it. I immediately thought like, oh, what about people with spinal damage, like people who are quadriplegics or whatever? Like, could you use it to repair synapses in the spine?
That would be crazy. If we
Mm-hmm.
could do that, then there would basically be no paralyzed people ever.
Yeah, yeah, like that's a
Yeah.
pretty crazy thought.
Wow. Oh man, that brings up a whole new question in my brain. So, if you could um repair the synapses and like reconnect the brain to people's legs or people's arms or whatever, would that lower people's risk threshold or hi-
Yeah, right.
higher?
Would people be more risky if they knew it
Yeah.
was not a problem if they broke their back?
Yeah. Like if you get paralyzed, you can just have a surgery and you won't be
Uh
paralyzed.
huh.
But like wow, man, that just that because like what are the long-term effects of what if someone broke their back twice or three
Yeah.
times or four times? Like what kind of effect does that have? But then if you can do that kind of stuff, does that have any effect? Because you could just fix it each time
Mm-hmm.
and repair it to its normal state. Man,
Right.
I never even really thought about that before. That's crazy.
Just don't die.
Yeah.
Don't get your head chopped off and you'll be fine.
That would be a crazy new rule of the world is just don't
Uh
die.
huh.
But anything else,
Yeah.
you can just have a surgery.
I also had a thought on chronic, like type 2 diabetes or something that is related to blood sugar issues. Like it's not a genetic problem like type 2 usually. Although
Type 1's genetic, right?
type 1 is, it's not as simple as that. It's I had to look it up because I was having this conversation with a coworker and finally I googled it and I was like, "Oh, I did not realize the distinction." And I think it's type 1 is your pancreas just doesn't produce any insulin. Um and then type 2 is
Oh,
I'm not even.
this type 1, your body stops making insulin. Type 2, your body can't use insulin effectively. So basically, insulin resistance.
Yeah, usually type 2 is related to insulin resistance. I did remember that. But so for type 2, it's a, like your liver is unhealthy. You probably have fatty liver. You're insulin resistant for some reason. Can this fix that? Or it sounds like it could possibly fix type 1,
Yeah, I
but
was
type
going to say
2,
'cause type 1's autoimmune and it could,
right.
wow, that's crazy. You could just cure all chronic diseases, multiple
Yeah,
diseases.
in
Wow.
theory.
Would new
Yeah,
disease pop up?
I don't know the limitations of this. I fully intended to look more into it, but I just haven't had time this week.
Wow. This is a very interesting discussion in terms of like what could you not do? I mean,
Right? Yeah. You almost start asking like, well, what's not possible with this?
yeah. And like what kind of new diseases does it bring up? Like, because
Right. Yeah.
everything comes with cost. So if you repair your back 5 times because you broke your back 5 times, what kind of
Hmm.
new thing is happening to your body? I don't know, but interesting.
But then there's some like a knee replacement surgery. There is danger. You could go into cardiac arrest or have a stroke while you're getting your knee replaced or whatever. But they're so routine now. They're like outpatient surgeries. I don't know. Yeah, maybe before I pontificate on this, I should look up the rate. What is the actual rate of complications to a knee surgery? But just from the people I know that have had it done, it's almost all upside. Very few of them have said that, like, oh, I got an infection when I had my knee replaced and it's caused all these problems, or ended up dead because of a knee replacement.
Well, they wouldn't be able
Like,
to do that.
yeah. So I'm sure it does come at some cost, but for my practical experiment or experience with everyday people, almost all of them are like, yeah, I should have done this sooner. Feels great to have new knees.
Wow. Do you think that it's possible? So let's say I've lived my life and I haven't taken care of my knees at all. Do you think it's possible to do some like functional movement and training to restore the strength to my knees to where I don't have to have knee surgery?
I think it's a few people that I know, it's not a strength problem as much as like their bones are literally grinding together. It's the pad between them that has disintegrated.
Oof, that does not.
Yeah, like they describe it as feeling like rocks rubbing. It sounds terrible.
That makes me so happy to be old. I just can't wait. It's gonna feel so good.
I did finally finish reading Myths of Happiness, which I thought was a good book. And at the end, it talked about how it was mostly just related to hedonic happiness. The whole book was more or less hedonistic happiness. Um, they did not make the distinction between necessarily like happiness and fulfillment, although there was some overlap. But they said that people perceive that older, when they get older, they will be less happy. But she said for most old people, it's actually the reverse, that scales of hedonic happiness actually increase with age. And she said there's major bumps and they happen around, I think it was 65, 69, and 79 for whatever reason. Um, but she talked about like there's various reasons for this, and one of them being you've had more life to review over and put after 70 years the quality of your life has increased so much that just by comparing back to what you had or did not have, or the family you have known that you didn't have, or whatever. Like my grandparents, there were no TVs, there was radio. Um, things were not cheap. There was no AC. They didn't have indoor plumbing. Like just over the 70 years of their life, there was so much that changed for the better. So, so there are things to look forward to when getting old. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. Now there's definitely some things being richer.
Especially if you could have like an eye on the back of your head or something.
That would be great. Literally eyes in the back of your head.
I will be the absolute latest adopter for those things.
I want to say that I would too, but also feel like I'm an early adopter for some stuff, so I'm not sure.
Myths of happiness. By the way, I'm getting off subject of this other thing, but she talked about how optimizers are the least happy decision makers because she said you're on the back of their heads. There's always the did I pick the optimal thing? And what about these other
That's
alternatives?
true.
She said the most happy decision makers are the people who know somebody who's an expert in whatever and they just go with what they say because they
Oh,
don't have
that
to
does
think
not make
about
me
like
feel good. Like, I don't want to just talk to an expert and then be like, "Oh, cool, you're 100% right. I'll go with
Yeah,
Levin."
yeah.
Like
But
that.
she was like, by outsourcing it to an expert, you don't have to look at a bunch of options and then wonder if you made the right selection. You're just like, oh, this is what they said to do. So
I don't know if I don't know if it's a good thing
you
for me
probably couldn't do
or
that.
yeah, I don't think that I could either. I'd be like, are they telling me the whole truth right now, or are they have
Yeah, me too.
self-bias?
I'm not necessarily an optimizer, but I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
I absolutely would have that experience. But it just, when she was talking about it, made me think of you.
thank you.
Are
Thank
you
you.
unhappy?
I mean, I feel pretty happy, but definitely when it comes to decisions, I always question if it's the best decision or not.
Sorry.
That's right. So, you have anything else on our topic from today?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I just thought that was pretty cool, and probably nothing will happen with it for another 20 years. But hey, maybe in 20 more years, we'll start hearing people. Somebody recently, I think it was this year or last year, they just used CRISPR to solve, I think it was sickle cell anemia in a child. So
That's
this
crazy.
stuff is eventually making its way into humans, but that's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
By the time you're old and need it, it'll be there.
fingers crossed.
All right. Well, I think that's all I have too. So,
Okay,
those of you
send us
watching,
email.
so jc.unscripted@gmail.com. That's the podcast.